The latest installment of Soccer Wars just dropped, and it's a big one. Weston McKennie receives rave reviews from his head coach, and we get to know a brand new American soccer district. That and much more here on Friday's Morning Kick-Around. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kick-Around, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's most favoritist country, coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Hope you all are well. What's happening, Mr. Davis?
Who's excited to talk about soccer and has two thumbs? This guy. That's a terrible joke. I don't know why I led with that on a Friday. Happy Friday, Robert. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be welcomed into the program by, what should we say, Peck Shea, or was it David Peckham?
Ooh. Yeah, I think we're still debating. There may need to be a poll. It is Franz Peckenbauer, maybe. Shout out to my friend Charles Boehm, noted American soccer journalist who has appeared on this show. We've had Charlie Boehm on this show.
I think have.
Maybe to talk about cash for trades back when it was just an idea before things were actually moving and shaking in Major League Soccer. And Charlie Boehm jumped into my mentions over on Blue Sky. Davis Jason on Blue Sky. That would be me. And he said, you could have gone with Cock Stein. It's right there. Could have gone right there. Now, I said to Charlie, it's a little dated. Who knows who Jock Stein is? Do you know Jock Stein, Robert? Are you aware of said soccer figure?
I only laughed because it sounded funny coming out of your mouth. I do not know the actual connection.
Jock Stein, Celtic legend. Jock Stein, a guy who managed Celtic for 12 years, also was at Leeds, also managed the Scotland national team. He was actually, I believe, he was Scottish. So yeah, he was a Scotsman who had very strong Celtic. I think he was part of that Celtic team, or he managed that Celtic team that won the European Cup. This is a little bit of history. They're called the Lions of Lisbon because they went and won the European Cup in Lisbon.
Know that one.
And I believe that the story is every single one of their players was from within 8 miles of Celtic Park or something. It was a very Scottish team that went and won the European Cup, and they still talk about that team at Celtic.
You spend your afternoons on the radio, not a visual medium, so you don't get to show off those the collection of kits you got. What do you have today? You got some very bright colors on. What you got? What you wearing?
This is the Philadelphia Union Lightning kit from a couple years back. I wore this today, so I thought I went through the rack. I wonder how many repeats we've done, because we've done some shows, so I feel like I'm cycling through. And I'm not keeping track of what I'm wearing. So I'm like, it's like when you were in high school. You didn't want to wear the same thing twice in a week because somebody might say, didn't you just wear that? Now, nobody cared and nobody ever noticed, but you were constantly worried about it. So I didn't want to wear the same shirt I've already worn. So I put on this one. I'm not sure when I last wore it because Philly just dropped. MLS kits are dropping, and we may need to do a review at some point in the near future. But Philly dropped a new kit sort of inspired by the Ben Franklin electricity motif. It's not lightning bolts. It's something else. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got the same vibe to it. So I thought I'd put this one on. I really do like this shirt.
Is there any sort of hidden a message or hidden images on there where the his unpaid assistant was holding the weather vane in the lightning? Is that hidden anywhere? An Easter egg on that shirt somewhere?
No, but now you're making me wonder if we should do Magic Eye soccer shirts. Do you remember Magic Eye, Robert?
You just got to relax your eyes, get there, and it'll pop out.
It's a schooner. It's a boat or whatever. Isn't that from Mallrats? Wow, we're really dating ourselves right now. Jenny's giving me a head nod in the production booth. So, yeah, there we go. All right. Well, we're off and running.
All right, we got a great show on the way. We got two guests here on Friday. We got John Morrissey to dig into the insane news that USL is adding a new or has plans to add a Division 1 to their setup. We're also going to get to know the district of Charlotte, North Carolina in a soccer sense, and then we got some headlines before we get into our long balls. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, do it already. We are on the march to 1,000 subscribers on the Morning Kick-Around YouTube channel, so be the very next, and then tell your friend to be the next after that.
Yeah, I would like to say we are approaching the MLS season. We are like 8 days from the kickoff of Major League Soccer 2025.
That's wild.
That is crazy, right? Crazy to think about. you're going to go out and you're going to watch games. You're going to go out to the stadium if you are a season ticket holder or you're a fan. I know we're going to talk to Gregg Franco from Charlotte, who's very much, in deep on the Charlotte FC culture, so I'm excited about that. When you go out and see all your soccer friends, the first thing you do is say, hey, you heard about Morning Kick Around? You know about Morning Kick Around? Jason Davis, Robert Kerr, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 Eastern. And if you miss it, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. It's on Spotify as a podcast, soon to come to other places as well, perhaps. That's what you do. So please help us out. Spread the word. Word of mouth is the strongest way for us to get the message out to the people.
Yeah, we started in late October, got the tail end of the season, talked playoffs, but this will be our first full season covering the Major League Soccer season together. So excited to do that together. Let's be a hub of that conversation, and more subscribers, more reach, more conversation, all the better. Follow along on social media at mkickaround, or write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We've gotten some great notes, including that's how we got our guest coming up. Greg, he wrote us a note, and he's coming on to the show. And finally, if you want to support us fiscally, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. And we got some great stuff over there, and help us out. Buy us a coffee, regular donation, however you can and want to support. All right, all that said, let's get into today's long balls here on Friday on Morning Kick Around. All right, long balls here, Friday, February 14th. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Bombshell news came out yesterday. Took me by surprise, and quite a few folks in the American soccer world. United Soccer Leagues announced plans to launch a Division I men league in direct competition with Major League Soccer. They already have a Division II, Division III, and pre-professional levels. And they speculate with the hopes down the road, perhaps to adding a pro rel system. But the big news coming out here this week, Division I in the plans for USL.
Okay, I'd like to say you are not factually incorrect at any point in what you just said, Robert, but there's no mention of Pro Rel in this announcement. There's no mention of Pro Rel over on the USL website with the Division I FAQs, right? They don't say we're doing Pro Rel. They're not even saying we're doing this because we want to do Pro Rel. Now, USL has in the past mentioned Pro Rel as a possibility. Back when Jake Edwards was in charge, since Paul McDonough has taken over as their president, they have said, we're thinking about it. We're going to maybe put it to a vote of our owners, but it's always been tabled and then they don't actually move forward on it. So I don't want anybody to get overly excited. Because I think this is catnip for American soccer fans. The idea of promotion and relegation coming to America, right? This thing about, oh my God, we're finally going to get some form. Now, Pro Rel exists in amateur leagues around the country locally. Nobody thinks of that as, meaningful Pro Rel. What we want is a professional expression of what Pro Rel can be.
Or even connect
USL,
those regional leagues all the way up, so those regional leagues are in some way connected through, a various pipeline to the top, all in one direction, right?
Sure, there's lots of problems with geography and costs and travel and stadiums and all those things. But,
Yeah.
maybe we'll kick that can down the road. We're going to talk about how USL might actually pull this off with John Morrissey, because he did the work on looking at the clubs that USL currently has in place. And we will talk about professional league standards with John, because that's really what this is all about. Do you meet the standards? But this is from Alex Papadakis, the CEO of USL. Today is a defining moment for the USL, the future of soccer in the United States. Which, way to raise the bar, Alec. Can't go much higher than that. It's a defining moment for the future of soccer in the United States. Creating a Division I league is a bold step forward, expanding access to top-tier competition, deepening the connection between our communities, and taking another step in aligning with the structure of the global game. Now, if you want to read between the lines, you can read that part, aligning with the structure of the global game, and you can say, well, he's talking about Pro Rel. But he doesn't explicitly say Pro Rel, Rob. By uniting people through soccer and bringing Division I to more cities, we're not just growing the sport, we're creating lasting opportunities while building a more sustainable and vibrant soccer ecosystem in the United States. Okay, it all sounds very nice, Robert, right? It sounds what do you think about those words that Alec has gifted us on a Wednesday or sorry, Thursday?
It certainly is not a boring thing to drop into the news feed on a Thursday, and the fact that there is some, I guess, over the last few years, is like, what could USL do to differentiate themselves? What can they do to, break beyond their current system? I mean, over time they have, established some solidity. Some teams have been around for a few years now. They still lose some teams every now and again. Still, Memphis, Northern Colorado, they dropped off. But there are teams that are establishing a little bit of solidity. So it's not obviously perfect yet. But over time, I mean, they needed to make a move. And Division One sanctioning, being in direct competition with Major League Soccer, which they never really have, because they had a competition, or had an agreement. They, for many years during the NASL, they were cooperative. Then they've been separate, and now they're perhaps shifting to competitor.
Would they be a competitor? Would they? I say that but as a cynic about a lot of things in American soccer because I've been around for a couple minutes. If you've been around for more than a couple years, you kind of go, you learn to see stuff like this and go, wait, yeah, okay, show me. Don't tell me, show me. Now, I say that, but partly because, again, they've talked about Pro-Rel, but don't explicitly mention Pro-Rel. They talk about access to the Division One, but don't actually say they want to compete with MLS. Right, there's been, I'm not going to say mixed messaging, but I think they've been careful not to do what the NASL did during their big push to move into MLS territory, so to speak. Basically, like, we know how to do soccer better than you know how to do soccer. Your way of doing soccer is the wrong way to do soccer, which is the history of American soccer. Is some wealthy people telling other wealthy people, your soccer's bad soccer, I have better soccer, and we've never really coalesced all of these things into one big pot, Robert. So, again, I don't want to say that there's not something here, that there's no meat on this bone. I just need them to show me rather than tell me.
The press release goes on a little further. I mean, there's a little bit of jargon, but I think it does reveal, it's like the kind of riding that fence of teasing the Pro-Rel idea, but not explicitly saying it. Papadakis adds that the USL model empowers clubs with greater autonomy and fosters dynamic, interconnected, one that allows them to compete at the highest levels while remaining deeply rooted in their communities. Around the world, top-tier clubs thrive in cities of all sizes, and we believe the same is possible here. The demand and infrastructure are in place, and the potential for growth is immense.
Okay. This is the thing you can say about the USL. Remember, USL is a business, and they are interested in growing their business, right?
No doubt.
Whatever their thing about, like, we want to grow American soccer, that's only important as part of growing their business. It's not to say they don't care about the game, but I'm saying anybody who runs a business is most interested in success as a business. So, and then again, this is something levied against Major League Soccer in the way they operates in America. Like, oh, they're always doing stuff in their own best interest. Well, they're a business. That's what they do. That same thing for USL. But I guess what we need to figure out is why it's important to have a D1 league at the top of this chart of things that USL has going on. They have this interconnected system, he says. They could institute Pro-Rel tomorrow if they wanted to. Now, you'd have to get every owner on board. You'd have to get everybody who owns an independent club, or a wholly owned club as opposed to a single entity model of Major League Soccer. And even in Major League Soccer, obviously, the people who are shareholders have to vote to approve things. They'd have to find a way to get everybody on board with the idea of, you could go down and lose a bunch of revenue, or play against teams that are in different places, or lose your biggest rivalry for a season or 2 or 3 or 5. Like, those are scary things in American soccer. When you are running very, very small margins, if you are making any money at all, and John Morrissey points out in his story at USL Tactics about the idea of a D1 league and how it could work for USL, that Detroit City, which we think of as an extremely successful lower division soccer team in America, loses millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
So how are we going to do Pro-Rel and have these teams survive? Now, again, you have to rip the Band-Aid off and try it, or we'll never know if it works, right? We will never know if it works. So it's not my money, so it's easy for me to say, hey, USL, go do it, because I want to see what happens. I'll be standing on the sidelines watching your whole thing go up in flames, or watch it, soar into the stratosphere, and I'll get to talk about it. That'll be great for me. But man, I don't. Again, so it's not that there aren't benefits to being D1, but they are not clear enough that this move is like, oh yeah, duh, of course they're doing this. If you know what I mean, Rob.
Of course, and we shall dig into this more. We are due to be joined by John Morrissey at USLTactics.com at 10:15 Eastern Time to dig into this further installment of Soccer Wars. Moving on to long ball number 2 here on Friday morning. Quote here, "It's impossible to leave him on the bench. He is such a special player." Those are the words of Weston McKennie's coach at Juventus after an impressive string of performances and a great goal midweek in the Champions League.
Yeah, this has been quite the journey for Weston McKennie. We were talking about the timeline for his time in Turin, obviously interrupted by his stint at Leeds United, which went terribly wrong, right?
Yeah.
So he arrives in late 2020 with Andrea Pirlo there. Andrea Pirlo was complimentary. So we've been tracking him. We see a lot of qualities. It's why we went out and got him. He was originally on loan. And obviously, Juve saw enough to execute the buy option, which I think was nearly 19 million euros, which is not nothing. I mean, it's not Christian Pulisic from Dortmund to Chelsea money, or even Pulisic to Milan money, but it's significant money, particularly for an American, and not a goal scorer, that kind of thing. And obviously, it was a process. Pirlo at one point was very on board. Then Weston came in for a new season, and Pirlo said something like, well, maybe your professionalism's not high enough. Get that professionalism up, son. He got hurt and missed time with a foot injury, and that's what led to the Leeds loan. Obviously, the change in management with Allegri coming in. I think his time with Allegri was, the ups and downs of whether or not Weston McKennie was good enough to be a featured player at Juve. And now, look, it's not just because of the goal that helped them win that game, right? So that they'll go back to Holland with an advantage in the Champions League. It's that he is sort of this all-around effort player who can do a lot of things. So I think is better technically than they thought he was when he arrived. I think he's shown that. So he is like continues to be this guy that we look at and go, yep, just keep plugging along. So you can show what you can do to everybody who comes in. It's unfair that he gets doubted consistently by every new manager, but it is a credit to him that he continues to show that he's capable of performing at high levels. Now, I think it was on this show that I said part of the problem with the perception of Weston McKennie is that I think when they bought him, they were rebuilding, and they're still not where they want to be. They're not challenging for a Scudetto. They're not a Champions League contender.
No.
So because of that, he feels like a tweener player. He feels like a bridge player for Juve between some bad times and the good times they hope are coming. And so is he going to continue to be the guy if Juve thinks of themselves or goes out and buys a couple more pieces and gets back to that Inter Milan, Napoli, Champions League winner level that they want to be at? I think that's still, despite what Motta has said, I think there's still people who would say, yeah, he's good, but he's not good enough for that.
Good enough for the squad, but not necessarily good enough to make the squad go to the highest heights that they want them to, right?
Exactly. Which makes it a really difficult sort of relationship for us as American soccer fans. I don't know how Juve fans feel about him, right? It's like, oh, yay, good job, Weston. We love you. And Thiago Motta's showering him with praise, so to speak. But I think, of course, in the back of their head, they're like, is he a Juve player who can help us win things? Because right now they're not winning things. And so everybody on the team, every player involved kind of gets labeled with, well, you're not good enough to win things. And we're Juve. So we're not supposed to just be happy with you. We're supposed to demand more. We can be glad that you're not screwing up, but our praise and our love for you only goes so far.
Yeah, we'll see. Interesting stuff. Great to see, though, one of the key figures of the United States men's national team get heaped with praise when he hasn't always done so. Long ball number 3 here on Friday morning. Americans abroad, there's plenty of games, club and league action back in after some domestic cup competitions the last week or so. Do you want to go start in Italy or in England?
Well, okay, so we're just going to avoid Germany because we have pain there. It's just all. I mean, John Tolkien playing for a bottom feeder club in the Bundesliga is doing a thing. There's a couple other guys over. Okay, so let's start in England, Rob. Since you gave me an option, I'll start in England.
All right, Tyler Adams and his high-flying Bournemouth and the Cherries South Coast Derby. They take on the not just the team in the South, but the team at the bottom of the Premier League. They visit Southampton. You'd think that hopefully Bournemouth and Tyler Adams go from strength to strength. Go to the Saints and take care of business as you think they should. I mean, they've been on such a hot roll. You'd be surprised if Southampton could stymie the Cherries this weekend.
Right. I mean, last time out for Bournemouth was the loss to Liverpool 2 weeks ago.
But that's their only loss in like a dozen games.
It is, right. And that's not and of course, Liverpool's the best team in the league. So you don't go, oh, I can't believe we lost to Liverpool. You're just a little disappointed you didn't show better at home against Liverpool in that game. And now you go against the bottom club in the table. Of course, you have to win that game. Tyler Adams continues to be important for Iraola, who, again, I will shower with praise in how he's managed the return of Tyler Adams to this lineup, and certainly he sees him as important for the way that he plays, which, there's probably nothing better for a player, because you can be very good, you can be very talented, and not fit a system, and find yourself sort of just around the edges, getting cup games, not getting real minutes, not getting significant minutes. And that's not been Tyler Adams. Tyler Adams has been, since he came back fully fit from his injury, a major part of what Iraola has done at Bournemouth. And, you can't say it's because of Tyler Adams that they are potentially, a Champions League level finisher. There's a hope there. I'm not saying they will. There's a couple teams ahead of them that will make it very difficult. But for Bournemouth to be in 7th, a victory away and some results away from being top 4, that's pretty remarkable. And Tyler's part of that.
And they're really fun to watch in general. It's set up for Tyler Adams to do what he does best, protect the back line, disrupt, and then pass it to, the players that can go forward. And they've got some really exciting attackers. Yeah,
and he's not, again, we know what Tyler Adams is. He's not some attacking dynamo. He's not going to give you a ton going forward. But every now and then he's good for recovery in a defensive end, picks his head up and makes a pass and starts things going the other direction, right? We know that Kluivert and Ouattara have benefited from Tyler Adams just getting the ball off his feet, like recovering the ball, getting the ball off his feet. And if you don't allow, in transition, you don't allow the opponent to reset, that's going to be an advantage for Bournemouth.
I think it's kind of funny how there's a multiple pairings of Americans on different teams scattered across Europe. I mean, there's the duo at PSV and then a couple of duos in Italy. We'll go to Milan, though, as Yunus Musa and Christian Pulisic visit Hellas Verona this weekend, wearing some special one-off kits. Apparently, this is Haute Couture collaboration with Off-White. AC Milan going to be wearing some stylish kits, apparently, against Hellas Verona at the weekend. And then Juventus visit Inter. Excuse me. Juventus visit Inter. Big game at the top end of the table in Italy is Weah and the aforementioned Weston McKennie in good form, taking on the table toppers, Inter Milan. Anything kind of stick out for you there between those two?
Well, I mean, you went through a rapid fire. Obviously, for Pulisic, for Milan, for where they are, not the result they wanted in the Champions League away against Feyenoord. They'll have a chance to turn that over midweek at home at the San Siro. Hellas Verona is a team they should beat, right? I say that. I mean, it's been an up and down season for Milan. They haven't been where again, we're talking about Juventus and them trying to climb back into being a contender in Italy. Milan is very much in that same boat. They are 5 points back of Juventus, and a couple points back of Fiorentina. So Milan right now doesn't even have a place in Europe if the season finished this way. And if you're going to be in a European place at the end of the season, and I know they want Champions League and not the other things, which are not quite as fun or quite as good, then you need to beat teams like Hellas Verona, right? You can't drop points. It doesn't matter where that game is. You can't drop points against Hellas Verona. Yunus Musa was suspended for the first match against Feyenoord because of the red card in Zagreb. So there's a chance that he'll be back in the lineup against Hellas Verona after sitting out. So we'll see what goes on there. And, of course, this is the continued integration of Santi Jimenez and João Felix. And the first league the first league opportunity, they look good, but they didn't look as good in the Champions League. So will they find a way under Conceição to make it work in Serie A?
Yeah, Hellas Verona in 15th in Serie A, and a correction, Inter in second, 1 point behind Napoli at the top of the Italian table. Juventus currently sitting in fifth there. Have you watched much Inter? I mean, how does Juventus and their strengths kind of match up with Inter? I feel like Juventus, it's kind of hard to peg them, where they are at. Are they on the ascent or not?
Inter Milan on the ascent, or Juventus?
Juventus. They have an opportunity to get a result against Inter, or is there a bit of a dearth?
No, I mean,
there?
It's a prove it thing for Juve in this game. Clearly, I mean, Inter is better. I mean, let's not act like they're not, or that that they don't have a significant advantage, especially at home. I'm sorry, this game is in Turin, not in Milan. But they do have an advantage. That's a better team. They are under pressure to walk down Napoli and win another Scudetto. And Inzaghi has been great as their manager. They do have a couple of things going on at Inter, that are worth watching in terms of some aging, and there's some guys that maybe aren't performing quite at the level. Obviously, Juventus has added Colomouani, who has already scored some goals for them, so that is a nice addition to that group that could help them. Because Juve, I think part of their issue is that they don't score enough goals to truly be elite in Serie A. Inter Milan scored 58 goals so far this season. Juve scored 41. I mean, that's a big difference in terms of goals, and that explains the 11-point gap between the two. Napoli doesn't score, but the thing about Napoli is they don't give up goals either. 17 goals conceded in 24 games for Antonio Conte. So, you either got to be really good defensively, and Juve is pretty good defensively. They're one of the best in the league, but you got to score goals. And I don't know if they're capable of scoring multiple goals against Inter Milan. I'm thinking 1-1 sounds right. I mean, it's just kind of a random throw-out prediction, but 1-1 sounds right to me, Rod.
Fair enough. This one a little bit outside the margins, but going to Spain, we didn't really talk about it too much, but Johnny Cardoso signed a long-term deal with Betis, and they host Sociedad at the weekend. Were you surprised to see that Johnny Cardoso got that kind of stamp of confidence for that deal at Betis?
No, I think they like him. I think they obviously think that they can flip him and sell him, and there's been talk about that. Tottenham's been interested. A couple of other teams, I think, have been eyeing Johnny Cardoso. He made a splash when he arrived at Betis, and Betis has doing relatively well. I mean, for that club, I think you have to be pretty thrilled about the season that you're having if you're a Betis fan, with a potential to move up the table. They're mid-table right now. They're in 11th. Yeah. Their recent form hasn't been great. They added Cucho Hernandez in the window. We should mention that from Columbus Crew. Johnny Cardoso, though, I don't know how comfortable I am with him in the U.S. men's national team. He never seems to bring exactly the same level that he has shown in Spain. But, of course, if you don't have Tyler Adams, if there are some guys who have drifted out of the picture, you wonder about Luca de la Torre, who's no longer in Spain, then Johnny could be the guy who benefits. He, though, obviously, he is a player who, when you sign that kind of contract, when you sign a new extension with a club like Betis at 23, you're not signing it with the idea that I'm going to be at Betis for the next 3 years. You sign it so that Betis can sell you benefit from what they've already given to you. And in the meantime, you have stability, right? You have a contract. You know that if you get hurt tomorrow, you're under contract at REL Betis. So, it's kind of that you're hedging your bets a little bit, but I don't think that Johnny Cardoso imagined himself playing at Betis for the rest of his career.
Full slate of games for Americans abroad. If there's a game that tickles your fancy, be sure to throw it in the comments. And there is Christian Pulisic modeling the specialty kit that his AC
what
Milan
is going
will be
on?
taking on.
What is going on here?
In the description, they called it like the Dreamland kit. And there was some reference to Martin Luther King and some other things. The press release is kind of weird.
What is the thing on the hill? Is that like a portal to some other land? What is the ball? Why is there a ball in the ocean? I don't understand what's happening. He's got his hand on a column, just as like in the middle of there were there ruins here, I guess is what we're supposed to think. But that one doesn't look very ruined. The other one looks like it's been weathered. That one's like brand new. I'm so confused by what's going on there, Rob.
Yeah,
but
Thomas
I wanted to show
in the chat. Yeah,
it.
it's the fever dream kit is what Thomas is saying in the chat.
That's right.
That's the end of Long Balls here for Friday. If you haven't already, click subscribe. Help us on the way to 1,000 subscribers. morningkickaround@gmail.com or support us at Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. We're going to take a quick breath and come right back with another installment of Get to Know Your District here on Morning Kick Around. Get to Know Your District here on Friday morning, the segment where Jason and I scour the country to find and shed light on all the districts of soccer across our fair country. And we are going to focus on Charlotte, North Carolina today. And we're joined by supporter Gregg Franco. Welcome to Morning Kick Around, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Jason, Rob.
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey. You said that you and your son went to the very first game for Charlotte FC and have, become entrenched in the team, becoming part of the supporters group, part of the kind of the infrastructure, setting up the tifos and whatnot. But before we get into the specifics of that journey and that experience with the Major League Soccer team, kind of like what is the kind of the landscape for soccer in town? Is there robust youth leagues? Is there small teams or did it kind of just drop in and people all of a sudden are engaged in soccer? Kind of what was the scene for soccer in Charlotte before CFC came about?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. So there's several teams. Charlotte Independence right now is in USL D1. They were in the final against NCFC a few years back. My son actually plays for their youth club, one of their competitive U13 teams. And as I said, he's a big reason why I've gotten into the soccer scene here in Charlotte. We also have the Carolina Ascent, which are a USL Super League women's team that premiered last year. I think they went 10 matches without a loss. So that was a pretty exciting start. Other than that, we, in addition to Charlotte FC coming on board, we also have their MLS Next Pro Club, which is just outside of Charlotte. That's actually how my son and I both met Patrick Ajimang, who we'll talk about in a little bit. He's also from Connecticut, which we moved from Connecticut back in 2017. So they formed a little bit of a friendship, which is, pretty funny. He's an 11-year-old kid. They've done a jersey swap. He asked Pat to do the gritty one time after a goal, and sure enough, Pat did it. So my son went absolutely wild. So it's a fun time for sure.
That's great. I think, okay, I'm going to just come at this with, I'm maybe going to build a little bit of a straw man here, and I'll apologize for that. But I definitely think there are parts of our country and fan bases and people who are sort of steeped in soccer in certain parts of the country. I would say, New York, New Jersey, Southern California, you might throw a couple other places in there who think, oh, that's the South. They don't do soccer in the South. That's football country. Like, they only care about throw ball, pigskin, gridiron, whatever derogatory name you want to use for that. I am a big football fan, but I get it, right? And you being from Connecticut, I imagine, or moving from Connecticut, I imagine you have a perspective on this too. I'm curious what you thought you were walking into soccer wise, or how you found the soccer culture to be maybe compared to some other places that you've experienced, because I think we've seen it in Atlanta. Now we're seeing it in Charlotte. I think people kind of miss that soccer really is a big deal in these parts of the country that have been thought of as football land.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? North Carolina is definitely a hotbed for youth soccer. No question about it. There are several youth programs in the area. As I mentioned, my son plays for Charlotte Independence. They have Charlotte Soccer Academy, QC Mutiny, which is also an MLS Next club. So they have actually a U13 squad. It's actually a little bit overwhelming as a parent just to kind of navigate that youth soccer scene. And just as an aside, one thing that's been great is I've been able to connect with a few of the players from Charlotte FC. Andrew Privett's dad is actually has become a friend of mine. So when I have some questions about youth soccer and my son making his way up, I've reached out and asked questions. So I just love the fact that you're able to have those connections. And I think that's a little bit different than, some of the other sports. You mentioned football, baseball, things like that. There's definitely a closer connection I see, to the team, to the squad. And I think that's what really drew us in.
So when Charlotte FC is announced and then eventually lost, like how did that come about? Like, what is it like to be a soccer fan and all of a sudden a team that wasn't there all of a sudden is?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. I wasn't what we refer to as, a day zero supporter, right? There were folks that were, championing this, well before we were awarded a club. So we came in a little bit later. As I mentioned, we went to the first match. We sat in the upper bowl. Really didn't have any idea what we were getting into. I remember there's a picture from our first match. Yeah. So I remember looking down in the supporter section, just seeing the passion, the emotion. And from then on, I said, that's where I want to be. And we've been there ever since. So my son sits in the first row of the supporter section. He has his own little crew now of kids, that'll be our next generation of supporters. And I have a lot of folks that I not only consider friends, but family at this point, going into season 4. So we truly have something special here in Charlotte.
So obviously the one thing that we talk about a lot with MLS teams, expansion teams, is sort of what kind of interest is there among casual sports fans, or just sort of within the community? Now we're all living in an era where there are fewer and fewer things that connect all of us, even in a place like Charlotte, even in one city. But I'm curious, like, if you can give us a snapshot, Gregg, of sort of how local media's responded to Charlotte FC, sort of, whether or not it percolates into places like sports talk radio or anything like that, if you have a handle on that, because I think that is a good measure of just how impactful a new team can be.
Yeah, I think we've definitely had a lot of support from local media. They do, mention we're not just an afterthought. Some of it, we've pushed ourselves when we have like a text line on WFNZ. We've coordinated where we just inundate their lines at a certain date and time, with text. So, so there is a ton of support around. And now it's becoming a lot more exciting. I think that we're gaining a lot of notoriety, bringing in Dean Smith last season, big name, highly respected in the sport. So, I think it's growing each year. And I'm watching these supporters groups grow as well. And one of the other pieces is really the diversity that we have. There's people from all different cultures. And there are folks that I never would have met, right, without the team, without the supporters groups, folks ranging from 20 to 60 that, again, I wouldn't know otherwise.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that a little bit, if you'll let me, Rob, because, I don't want to paint this like I'm talking only about sort of, I don't know how to describe, mainstream English speaking culture. Obviously, so much of soccer in this country is and passion for it and supporters groups and everything are driven by by immigrants or by people first generation, second generation families who come from other places. So I imagine that's got to be part of it as well, Greg.
Oh, definitely. My son has learned his fair share of Spanish. Probably some words he shouldn't know, but it's that's part of the gig, right? So, but it's the diversity. It's bringing in pieces from all different cultures, right? We have a lot of South American folks. We have folks from England, and we're putting our mark on that, right? And as I said, Charlotte is very much a transplant city. We joke that it's very rare to meet somebody from here. Everybody's from somewhere else, whether it's Ohio, New York, but they're all bringing their perspective, their thoughts, their ideas. So that's what makes it exciting as well.
Going into year 4, let's talk about the fun stuff. The MLS season is a week or so away now, which is wild to think about. But you said you guys have a relationship with Patrick Agyemang, who kind of stepped onto the scene with his January camp goals and appearances, and then the addition of Premier League stalwart Wilfried Zaha. What's the feeling in the fan base, and what do you think? Do you think that the team on a whole is ready for a big step up the table in 2025?
Yeah, I think Patrick Agyemang's call up in January, that was big for him. 2 appearances, 2 goals. Going into it as supporters and as fans, we didn't know if he was going to get any minutes. So to see him start in that first match was just incredible. To see him score there was a lot of emotion. As I mentioned, we've watched him, after he was drafted in the MLS Super Draft from University of Rhode Island, watching him with Crown Legacy for a year, which is a very intimate setting, and you get to know folks. It's just been exciting to watch him grow. That front line, as you said, having Wilfried Zaha and his technical skills. I think that might be the piece that that really makes us a contender. Top 4 in the league. And we had additions last year of Liel Abada and Pep Biel, who came in mid-season. Those folks now, will have an entire preseason with the squad. So I think that helps a lot. And then, you turn to the defense, which was, I think, second in the league in goals allowed, 1.08. You have them anchored by Christian Kalina, who was the MLS goalkeeper of the year. And then you have Andrew Privet and Adilson Malanda in front of him. And then, of course, U.S. men's team, Tim Ream. So a lot of excitement in Charlotte.
Yeah. So before we wrap up with you, Greg, and you giving us a good overview, what do you think is the thing that makes Charlotte's soccer culture or Charlotte FC support sort of unique? Because that's one thing as American soccer people that we kind of wrestle with, is like how is this just ours? How is this different from what Atlanta's got going on, or maybe what they're doing in New York or California, whatever? What do you think is like the unique characteristic of Charlotte FC in soccer?
Oh, that's a good question. I probably touched on it before, but I think it's just having all those unique perspectives, and again, being a transplant city and just having those different perspectives, the different types of chants, right? We talk a lot about chants and drums, and we have several meetings, and there's
What's the best song? What's the best song Charlotte FC has at a match? You got one, right? Come on. What's your favorite? I put you on the spot. I feel bad now.
You did. We do have a chant.
Go
for
Charlotte.
Yeah, we do have a chant for Ashley Westwood, which is to the tune of "Achy Breaky Heart."
Okay. All right.
That's a good one as well. So that came about last season, which, by the way, Ashley Westwood, awesome guy. You couldn't ask for a better captain. We do not like Orlando. So there are some chants with some probably some questionable language as well. So
all right.
Yeah.
I want to show one more picture that Greg sent us, Robert. This is his son. This is just an incredible picture. Like, I can't.
My favorite, yeah.
That is an incredible picture. I don't even know what to say about it. Just that is boss right there. So that's great. I'm glad that all of this has come together. Can you shed a little bit more before we let you go? Shed a little bit more light on the relationship with Patrick, how that came about, and give us a little bit more about what Patrick Agyemang has come to mean to your kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has helped. My son's name is Paul. I think it's helped him know that, hey, there is a path, if I want to work hard and make it. There's been a few stories lately. I mean, Patrick was a Division III player, right? He played for Eastern Connecticut State University and then ended up with URI. So, I think he's kind of paved the way that, hey, anyone can make it if you put in the work. So, and he's pretty determined, at 11, he's playing U13, where I've told him, I'll take you as far as you want to go. So, and he's pretty committed to it. So,
That's
in
great.
terms of the relationship with Patrick, that's pretty exciting. As I said, we have the, both from being from Connecticut, meeting him through, Crown Legacy matches. I chat with his brothers a little bit on Instagram. We have some banners and some flags for this season that we'll be premiering. We're really we're trying to choose between the Ajimang Hive, which is one term that folks have used for his supporters, or the Aji Gang. So there's some debate there.
Aji Gang is pretty good.
Aji Gang's better.
Yeah,
That's better.
So his brothers have kind of weighed in on that too, and they're great guys as well. So he has 2 twin brothers.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us. I did like the MLS featurette they did on Patrick Ojiman in January. They showed some footage from the D3 and him playing on with the football lines and everything at that low level of college. So it just kind of, his story speaks to what a lot of us think, that with the current American soccer scouting, that there could be just diamonds in the rough at these places, kind of off the beaten trail. So that's great to see. But thank you so much for joining us and shedding light on the district that you hail from, North Carolina. We put it on the map, put a peg in North Carolina. Now, I think we'll have to have you as our correspondent in that part of the country moving forward, and seeing how year 4 for Charlotte FC goes. So thank you so much from Mint City Collective, Gregg Franco. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg.
Morning
Thank you, Greg.
Kick Around.
Thanks, Rob.
If you guys haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. We are on the march to 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, and you should be next. We're going to catch our breath, come right back with a great segment, Hot Topic, with John Morrissey here on Morning Kick Around. In the latest installment of Culture Wars here on Morning Kick Around, we are still reeling from the news that dropped on Thursday afternoon. USL, the American Second and Third Division, I think a league company, shall we say, announces a Division 1 team is in the works. And to talk about it, we are welcomed by USL expert John Morrissey from USLTactics.com. Thank you for joining us here in quite the moment here on Friday morning.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had more requests to come talk to people about a news story out of the USL. So I think that's kind of evidence of this is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, it means, again, it means you're the go-to guy, which is incredible, because I'm glad for that, John. I definitely encourage people to go to USL Tactics, to read everything that John is putting out, follow him on all social media in this moment, because look, I'm a cynic. I don't know, John, if you've seen me express my opinion on this. It's going to be a more show me rather than tell me thing. As somebody who's watched leagues come and go and seen the soccer wars, but I'm a veteran, right? I'm a veteran of covering the soccer wars. But it still means something when an organization that has done as much work and built as much as USL makes a statement like this. So before we dive into the nuts and bolts, the things that you broke down at your website, give us your initial reaction to this news, and maybe give us your thoughts as to why USL thinks it's important to have a D1 league.
Yeah, I mean, kind of taking that second question first. If you're the USL, there's a certain cap on how big your clubs can grow, the level of success they can enjoy with that kind of D2 moniker. And with that comes the minor league label. American sports fans aren't used to supporting minor leagues. When you think about minor league, it is weird promotions. It's your AAA baseball team. It's something that you don't necessarily take seriously. And so if you're the USL and you've got a group of 12 to 14 clubs that are trying to push higher, that are trying to cement their status, become profitable, build stadium projects, it makes sense to let those teams try to step up, try to take that leap and become a little bit more relevant in the sporting scene. If that's the aspiration, I'm on board. If the USL truly sees that as, okay, this is the springboard to Pro REL, this is the springboard to directly competing with MLS, that feels like a fool's errand. And I think that's where the hesitation comes in from my side of things.
So I'm actually curious. Just as the news released, came out an Athletic article yesterday. Paul Tenorio had Commissioner Paul McDonough on there. Did this take you by surprise, like when it hit your news feed, or did you kind of think this was in the works?
There've certainly been whispers about this for a couple of years at this point, but to just have it drop on a normal old Thursday morning and say we're doing it definitely was a shock for me. Like, obviously the USL has been planning, but to make it real, to have the president out there saying we're doing it, really surprising to see.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, I think we broke down a little bit of sort of how much promotion and relegation is part of this story, John. But we could do that with you, and I certainly think that you would be able to give us plenty of insight there. But I do want to focus on what you wrote on your website as you kind of dived into how do you build a D1 league if you are USL. And obviously they have the USL Championship with right now sanctioned as a second division league in the country. And I guess what we need to do, as I scroll through your piece here, everybody go to usltactics.com, subscribe, do everything to support John.
There you go.
So I think PLS, right? We have to talk about the leagues, the professional league standards. They are so critical to whether or not USL can pull this off. So right there, give us your writing on those standards, how they apply, and maybe what USL is looking at in trying to populate a 12 and then eventually 14 team league.
I mean, as you're seeing on screen, kind of 4 big boxes to check. In order of like difficulty to get there, that 12 to 14 number, easy to do. The USL has more than 30 some odd teams that they could potentially draw from. Not a problem. Same thing with the 3 time zones. Like, there's enough geographic spread across the league where it's not going to be problematic. Once you get into the metro population question, and that's kind of tied in with the stadium issue as well, where 75% of the clubs in this league need to be located in a metro with more than 1 million people, and every single stadium that the USL is playing in needs to exceed 15,000 seats in capacity. Once you start kind of exploring the permutations of, okay, this stadium works or this stadium can be expanded, but this team plays in a city with 700,000 people, it becomes a little bit trickier to figure it out. At the end of the day, there is not a single USL club that is playing in a self-owned soccer-specific stadium that meets D1 capacity requirements. That's a massive problem to make this happen. Now, when you look at the press release, you look at the Athletic article, it's clear that the USL has been in conversations with US Soccer. And we've seen in the past when the USL jumped from D3 to D2 back in the mid-2010s, US Soccer was willing to give the league waivers and say,
yes,
we get it, you're working towards the capacity thing, we'll give you a couple of years to make that transition. You have to think that that's going to be the situation again come 2027 or 2028, because it's simply impossible for the league to pull this off, to get those stadiums expanded like they need to within that timeline. Like, it is literally an impossibility logistically.
Well, so let me ask you. I mean, again, this all makes sense. You're working from a list of clubs that USL already has, and again, they most of these clubs check at least one of the boxes you need to check for PLS. But how much do you think this is a play to attract new investment in different cities, starting from zero? Now, obviously, you still have to build stadiums, and I don't know how you do that on the timeline we talked about, John, but there are some places in America that don't have teams, and this has been the MLS move. Let's go find some really wealthy people to put a team in San Diego or whatever. So is USL thinking there are some 1+ million markets out there that we can find new people to invest in our league?
The thing about the markets is that they're fairly saturated at this point. There are only about 50 markets that kind of meet that minimum. So when you consider, and I've not even got USL League One listed there, but if you consider what cities are covered in League One, covered in the championship, and then MLS, you're pretty much filled. And MLS Next Pro is already going into Cleveland. They are aiming at other markets that could fit the bill. So that's competition on the bottom end.
It's competition. You're not saying that USL can't go into those markets. It's just that we'd have competition in those markets because, again, there are no concerns because they're two different leagues. There are no concerns about territorial rights. It's just within the leagues that they would have those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about like a city like Chattanooga, where Next Pro has Chattanooga FC. That's the community club, does quite well for themselves. The USL has the Chattanooga Red Wolves, who are, let's be real, poorly run, don't draw many fans. They're losing the battle in that city. And you don't want to just wantonly go into a market to meet the numbers if you don't have the proper infrastructure. And so I think that's why the D1 thing can maybe, like you're saying, be a draw for better ownership groups. I think a thing that kind of went under the radar yesterday, as soon as the news broke that USL was doing this, the expansion effort in Jacksonville made it very clear that they are looking towards a 15,000 seat stadium. We've not seen a number announced for the announced group that's come into Dallas for the USL, but you got to think they're planning towards 15,000. So I think it's raising the bar for the set of teams that are already coming in. And there are teams in the works right now that we don't know about yet that are going to follow that same path.
Yeah, this comes down to a lot of like the pro league standards. If for those that don't know, there's like, the pretty stringent requirements on the metro area and the stadium requirements and all that. And obviously guidelines are important, but to many they seem more prohibitive than ensuring quality in the ownership and the markets or the cities that the teams are located in. Do you think that this might indicate there might be a revision of the USSF's pro league standards, or there may be like a mass waiver situation coming?
It's a good question. I mean, we just saw that big lawsuit with the NASL where US Soccer pretty stringently defended the existence of the pro league standards. But when you think about why they went into effect in the first place, it was kind of this setting the floor, assuring stability thing, preventing a league like the NASL from kind of just wrecking shop without real intention behind it. Given that the USL is talking to US Soccer, has earned their trust over the course of decades of operation moving up the pyramid, I think that improves the argument for the waivers, possibly reform to the PLS. But I think US Soccer wants that kind of safeguard in place just in case.
I think, okay, one thing that's not included here when we talk about the PLS, and this is just like from a league organization standpoint, you've broken it down, is the net worth requirement for ownership groups, right? And it's something I haven't even brought into this conversation yet, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it, John, because I just had a back and forth with Peter Wilt on Blue Sky a couple of weeks ago around the NASL lawsuit. His concern, or his big issue, is we should allow for there to be clubs that are community owned. We can have socios the way that they do in Spain, 50+1 the way that they do in Germany. Do you think that there's anything on the table for that? Because, you can argue, like, do you need to be in 3 time zones? Do you need to have 15,000 seat stadiums across the entire league, et cetera, et cetera? Do you need to have the metropolitan area thing? Like, that seems fairly arbitrary. If you have a hot soccer market that has 500,000 people, they can put 15,000 in a stadium. You don't need 1 million plus. But in terms of how ownership is structured, those are pretty big barriers for anybody entering American soccer.
No doubt about it. And when you look at kind of the requirements for ownership, it's like 70 million for the group at D1. You need a principal owner that's at the 40 million net worth. In the grand scope of things in the United States, that's not that much money. Like, to us three, sure, that's life-changing, but there are a lot of business people who just have that to throw around. And I think you've seen in the championship already, yes, the Oakland Roots and Orange County SC aren't fan-owned, but they've opened up the possibility of fan investment into the teams. I think if we could get to that hybrid model as a start, that would be terrific. I don't know if US Soccer would ever allow for full fan ownership, and I think that's a shame. But again, it's about the health, it's about the continued operation of these clubs. So you get it, even if it is a little bit disappointing to see kind of the limitations on the model.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me turn us to, again, the third rail of American soccer, and such it has been for many, many years, and ask about REL. And do you think that is a legitimate part of this plan? This we want to have a D1 because it's going to be at the top end of our internal USL promotion and relegation system.
I think in a vacuum, the USL just doing D1 without REL doesn't really move the needle. Maybe it'll get them a few more broadcasting dollars. Maybe it's a little bit better to draw players in from overseas, but it's not changing anybody's mind or drawing in considerable amounts of new fans. Pro-Rel, they've been dangling the carrot for 8 to 10 years at this point publicly. That feels like the thing that potentially could be a game changer. Could it destabilize the entire pyramid? Of course it could. Like, there's a real chance it's kind of you're committing seppuku with that. But it feels like the one change that could really make a dent in the mind of kind of the neutral fan who's not paying attention to the USL right now. Will it happen? That depends a lot on the ownership groups. I've heard noise that there is kind of increasing positivity about it behind the scenes, but we've been hearing that same kind of language for 8 to 10 years as well. So it makes sense as a next step, but I am a little bit bearish on the actual implementation happening.
We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. I think we'll have to figure out what your soccer camouflage in if you're going to be on the front lines of the soccer war here, John. You're going to get some face.
Just
to
be clear. Just to be clear, John, myself, having been a veteran, we are covering, we are media, we are press, we are not involved in the fighting. Okay, that's not what we're made for, right, John? Are we good? Are we good? Yeah.
It's like a wartime reporter. You're kind of integrated with the troops,
right.
but you're just there to talk about it. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. We're gonna be the guy who took all the photos during the Civil War and got famous. I can't remember his name. Matthew
Brady.
something.
Yeah,
there you go, Matthew Brady. Thank you. See, there we go. We're on the same page.
He is John Morrissey. His website is usltactics.com. Check his stuff out, and I'm sure there will be much more to follow up on this story as USL makes a move at a Division I league. Thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Kick Around, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Viewer, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Morning Kick Around on youtube.com. Help support this show. We will dig into more soccer districts across the country. We will be tapping into those experts in the know, such as John, and get them on the show, and then just expand this and make this a sustainable and growing show, wanting to be one of the center points of the American soccer conversation as we get into these heady times of World Cups and competing Division I teams.
Follow along as Robert Kerr gets a full education in modern MLS. It's been a while since he's paid real close attention. So let's go. Let's get Rob seriously involved in MLS in 2025.
Yeah, I think Summer Soccer Central will be a segment. We bring you along in the amateur summer soccer, and what was it, Virginia Dream or one of those teams? You'll get into one of those.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
yeah. And then we'll go for a full, was it a 10-month season of Major League Soccer?
Oh, it's too much, Rob. You can't handle it. Your life is too busy. 10 months is just, you can't. Come on, man. Make the commitment. Let's go.
All right, we'll take the plunge together. How about that? You, me, the viewers, hold hands and take the plunge into Major League Soccer starting next week. Oh my goodness, my goodness. We shall see. We shall see how Major League Soccer and Morning Kick Around fare in 2025. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for our guest, John Morrissey, and Mr. Gregg Franco. From North Carolina. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your soccer this weekend. See you on Monday.